What's going on, guys? Your boy First Drew, aka First and Three Dots. I want to thank you guys again for joining with me on another segment of the Social Pirate Network. Today we're going to be talking about U.S. elections and campaign funding. And throughout this video, you're going to see the history behind the corrosive effects that it has had on our democracy. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. This is Campaign and Elections, How the Dollar Dictates Democracy.
There are two things you need to run a successful campaign. The first one is money, and I forgot what the other one is. That's a quote from Mark Hanna. Hanna was a senator from Ohio and a close political ally of President William McKinley. Hanna flexed his wealth to run McKinley's presidential campaigns of 1896 and 1900. When Ulysses S. Grant ran for president in 1868, he benefited largely from wealthy contributors such as Cornelius Vanderbilt, the railroad tycoon. One historian wrote, "Never before was a candidate placed under such great obligation to men of wealth as was Grant." During the Gilded Age, the last few decades of the 1800s, poverty and inequality for most of the population was overwhelming. Even with growing industries such as railroad, mining, and manufacturing, the concentration of wealth was becoming more and more visible, and it wasn't by accident. I believe in the division of labor. You send us to Congress, we pass laws under which you make money. And out of your profits, you further contribute to our campaign funds to send us back again to pass more laws to enable you to make more money. Senator Boyce Penrose, 1896. Throughout the decades following, money dominated politics. And even with the certain regulations put in place, they were never really enforced. And it only got worse. The 1960s brought in a whole new wave of democratizing factors. And with the institutions of authority came backlash to these ideologies.
There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart, that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
In 1971, a corporate lawyer named Lewis F. Powell sent a memorandum to the Chamber of Commerce, displaying his concerns of the indoctrination of the youth. The famous Powell memo was a letter encouraging corporations and financial institutions to use their resources to start influencing the media, universities, and other business think tanks to start engaging in governmental affairs to protect their interests. The Chamber of Commerce claims to be about protecting small business and promoting economic growth. That's not true, and we all know it's not true. It's a major business lobby dominated by huge corporate influence. A turning point came in 1976 when a Supreme Court case, Buckley v. Vallejo, ruled that regulating election spending was unconstitutional and that expenditure limits contravened the First Amendment's provision of freedom of speech because a restriction on spending for political communication reduces the quantity of expression. One of the associate justices responsible for this ruling was Lewis F. Powell. In more recent years, Buckley Vallejo was used in other Supreme Court cases, such as the landmark ruling of Citizens United and McCutcheon v. FEC. So essentially now, any entity, such as powerful corporations, can exercise their freedom of speech in huge and unlimited campaign contributions. In 2012, the United States witnessed the most expensive election of our history, with both Obama and Mitt Romney over $1 billion each, most of it funded by corporations and private enterprises. It was the first major election after the ruling of Citizens United. Was that a coincidence? Or is crony capitalism running the political reality show? Thomas Ferguson, a political science and economic professor, put together a collective study with his colleagues on how money drives elections. And what the study concluded with astonishing accuracy is that the candidate with the most campaign contributions basically wins the elections. Policy decisions are heavily in favor of catering to the interests that fund the campaigns, and they don't hide it. A good example of this is Trump's budget director, Mick Mulvaney. Trump just appointed him to be acting director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The Bureau was created and implemented in 2010 as a response to the financial crisis and Great Recession in 2007 and 2008. It was designed to protect consumers from predatory financial institutions. Mick Mulvaney is now in charge of the Bureau, and he wants to dismantle it. He is now dropping investigations and cases into financial lenders that contributed to his campaign. One includes a lawsuit against 4 payday lenders located on Indian reservations for charging interest rates of 440% to 950%. Would you really consider that capitalism? Did those companies work real hard and pull themselves up by their bootstraps? Of course not. But they did, however, rob the ones that do. Trump himself has even aligned with these institutions, collecting $1 million for his inauguration. Maybe it's just a coincidence that the Community Financial Services Association of America announced its annual conference and expo at one of Trump's resorts in Miami. Large multinational corporations, especially oil and energy companies, and the NRA play a huge role on using their financial power to put democracy in a chokehold. You can see how legislation is drawn out just by following the money that sponsors it.
With money corrupting our political arena, it's very unclear that we'll get the truth when it comes to issues that affect us all. Environmental issues, tax reform, public safety, even down to the food we eat. How much longer are we going to survive as a nation if we continue to allow the dollar to dictate democracy? With our differences to the side, I think it's clear enough that we need to do something about it. And how long are we going to continue to scapegoat poor people and immigrants? Poor people and immigrants don't have wealth or power, but you know who does. Multinational corporations, financial institutions, private enterprises. They have a lot of wealth and power. And they prowl the halls of Congress, and they lobby politicians to write up laws and legislation to protect their interests. I want to thank you guys again for joining me. On our next video, the topic is going to be tax reform. Where do your pennies go, and where do your dollars go? I said it once, I said it now, I'm saying forever. I want you guys to be informed, be inspired, and be involved. We'll talk soon. Thanks.